Okay, so you probably noticed from those preseason videos that the big question is a bit of hyperbole, but it's supposed to get you focused on the business at hand. And after a soggy but dominant 17-8 win over the Philadelphia Phoenix in Week 1, the New York Empire are back at it at home at Joseph Efesina Field on Friday night at 7 p.m., welcoming the Toronto Rush. 1-0 doesn't mean you get to throw around the word Dynasty just yet. That comes for champions, which the Empire have won 2 of the last 3. But due to a certain franchise called the Toronto Rush and a bunch of years of weird circumstances, it's hard to actually say who's the real dynasty of the East Division. And so I'll lay out the facts here and let you decide, and I think it depends on whether or not you're wearing red or black and how you go on this divide. In sports, nothing lasts forever. Players eventually do age out, and the franchises go on. And there's no better example of this than the Toronto Rush. They were East Division champs for 5.5 seasons, capturing the regular season crown every year from 2013 through 2018. And 2013 was not only their AUDL debut, but also an undefeated season and the AUDL championship. And you know the names: Mark Lloyd, Cam Harris, Steve Armitage, Thompson McKnight, Isaiah Massakelli, Jeff Lindquist, Andrew Carroll, Remy Ojo, and that's leaving some names out. There was also Adrian Yearwood, handler extraordinaire, who is now back in charge as coach for a 3rd season of his former team. Since its inception, only 2 teams have gone to championship weekend coming out of the East. While the DC Breeze did win the regular season 2 years ago, they did not capture that championship crown in the East Division. It was Toronto, as I mentioned, to get to championship weekend from the East for 5 straight seasons. But before they could take their 2018 regular season crown and turn it into another championship weekend berth, the New York Empire, on July 28, 2018, made their all-time record against the Rush 1-17. It was an ugly game, not the kind of game where you think a torch has been passed. The final score of that game was 18-17, with Ben Yott finding Jeff Babbitt with 1:16 on the clock for the go-ahead score. On the other end, the Rush failed to answer, turning it over in their own end zone. Ben Katz picked it up, and that was that. Since that time, it's either been New York or a big ol' asterisk. In 2019, the last season where you looked around and still saw a bunch of those Rush legends waltzing around, the Rush finished 7-5 and finished 2nd in the division, losing 19-16 to the Empire in the East Division Championship game. New York obviously was a perfect 15-0 that season, winning their first AUDL title. 2020 halted any talk of Dynasty at that point, and the 11-3 2021 that ended in the AUDL final didn't mean an East Division title. And Toronto, meanwhile, were taking part in the Canada Cup alongside Montreal and Ottawa, and didn't make the trip over the border all season long. Last season, the rebuild, technically in year 2, finally looked real for the Rush, especially in the East Division, as they went 4-8, as the Empire went 15-0 and won the AUDL title. At Efesina Field last season, the Empire cruised to a 31-17 win, and up in Toronto got pretty ugly in a 25-8 demolition by New York. Yet, that's what makes the Toronto-New York rivalry so intriguing. All time, New York is still just 5-17 against the Rush. That's how long the Toronto Rush dominated the East Division. It feels like every game, New York against Toronto, that the Empire are still chipping away at the past. And that feeling is bolstered when you see Cat Stevens and the Dross still doing their thing out there. And this season, the rivalry should heat up a little bit more again, because the Rush have done nothing but get better, at least on paper. They've added Ty Barbieri of Team Canada and reintroduced Mike McKenzie. And those aren't the only 2 big additions. They've also added Ottawa's Jeff Bevan and Jeremy Hill, arguably the Outlaws' 2 best all-around offensive weapons, and they all raised the Rush's ceiling. But I think the most important part of their season success is about growth as much as it is new additions. If Oscar Stonehouse, James Lewis, Wilkie Lewis, and Zachary Armstrong all take a step forward around offensive hub Luke Camire and defensive hub Phil Turner, Toronto's way back seems a lot sooner than you think. The key for the Empire on Friday is not to get accused of what they accused Toronto of back in July of 2018. And that's not to be tired of winning. Last season, the Empire weren't content with that 25-8 victory against the Rush, but this season, if they are content with it, the Rush certainly have had a lot more promise and could, in their season debut, cause a little bit of an upset. That's the cycle, I guess. Once winning becomes old news, then it's time for somebody else hungry to come up and eat. This Friday, it's a matchup between the only 2 teams who've ever eaten at championship weekend from the East. And as history shows, there's always a lot on the line. There should be much better weather than there was against the Philadelphia Phoenix for Week 1, so get your tickets and we'll see you there.